Today's episode is an interview with Patty Weltin, founder and CEO of Beyond the Diagnosis. I invited Patty on the podcast because she's an advocate for individuals and families living with rare diseases, and she has a unique way of using art to educate others about rare diseases, also known as orphan diseases. You're listening to the Pharmacist Voice Podcast, a journey-style podcast about my career change from pharmacist to voice actor. I'm your host, Kim Newlove. I alternate solo shows and interview shows. The solo shows are about my career change, and the interview shows feature a variety of people who use their voices to advocate, educate, or entertain. I specialize in medical narration and e-learning. If you have a project in mind, contact me through my website, thepharmacistvoice.com. Thank you for joining me for episode 19. I'll share some background information about my guest, Patty Weltin, and about Beyond the Diagnosis. Then we'll dive right into the interview. Patty Weltin is the CEO and founder of Beyond the Diagnosis. She is the mother of 2 children with Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, a rare disease. Patty began working in this space by creating a new business model of working by state. She is from Rhode Island. Her award-winning work in state-level advocacy grew to national advocacy efforts. Today, Patty proudly works to successfully use art as a powerful tool to create awareness and innovation into orphan and neglected diseases. Beyond the Diagnosis unites art and science. It began working on a project to increase research and raise awareness of rare diseases within the medical community through art. Professional artists paint portraits of children living with a rare disease. The portraits then become part of a traveling exhibit for medical schools, research institutes, and hospitals. This exhibit has also touched the hearts and minds of the general public. Since the debut, Beyond the Diagnosis has visited the National Institutes of Health, Broad Institute, Hofstra Medical School, Harvard Medical School, the Food and Drug Administration, and many more. There are 7,000 rare diseases. Rare diseases became known as orphan diseases because drug companies were not interested in adopting them to develop treatments. Less than 5% of all orphan diseases have a treatment. There are no cures. People living with orphan diseases experience long diagnosis times, few medical experts, no treatments, financial hardship, and emotional stress. The Beyond the Diagnosis art exhibit's focus is the orphan disease patient. Artists have donated their time and talents to paint orphan disease patients for this groundbreaking exhibit. Each portrait represents a single orphan disease. The goal of Beyond the Diagnosis is to put a face to all 7,000 orphan diseases. This beautiful exhibit is traveling to medical schools, research institutes, and hospitals around the globe, encouraging the medical community to look beyond the diagnosis, to the patient. Art has been used for thousands of years to successfully convey a message, whether it be a story or a glimpse into the human spirit. Art not only leaves a powerful and lasting visual imprint, but it also creates a unique connection for the viewer. Without further ado, here's my interview with Patty Weltin. Welcome to the podcast, Patty Weltin. How are you today?
I'm great, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. I invited you on the podcast because you use your voice to advocate and educate. The rare disease community has many unmet needs, as you know, and your advocacy work and your unique way of educating are helping. Can you tell me what is Beyond the Diagnosis and how did it get started?
Well, Beyond the Diagnosis has completely evolved into something that it didn't start out to be. At first, it started because my kids have Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. At the time I started, my daughter had spinal cord surgery, and she was diagnosed with a disease called hypermelanosis of Ito. We didn't know at the time that she had Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, even though tethered spinal cord is a common comorbid of Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. She had other weird, she had a lot of hyperpigmentation on her skin. One of her fingers was missing a section of the finger. Her hands and feet were deformed. But the main comorbid of this HI was the hyperpigmentation, and that's how they came up with the diagnosis. So when I attributed the spinal cord issues to her HI. And at the time, she had a bunch of minor surgeries. That was the most major surgery she had had. It was right after Rare Disease Day. And I was in the hospital and she was recovering. And I was looking at some of the events that they had on Rare Disease Day. And I noticed that a lot of them were disease specific. And I thought, wow, I feel like I'm on the same journey. When I had met other rare moms, and I thought it doesn't matter what the disease was. And, I could connect with anybody. And I just didn't think at the time that there was enough meeting of people. Like we're so isolated and so unusual with these diseases that we really need that human connection. So I started thinking, once a year, I'm going to work only in Rhode Island. And I started the Rhode Island Rare Disease Foundation. We're going to work only in Rhode Island. And once a year, I'm going to do a Rare Disease Day event. Our first event had 150 people that drove out in a blizzard, which is incredible. We had 300 responses. I think it was one of the largest rare disease events in the world at the time. That was, I think, 2012 was our first Rare Disease Day event. And we wanted to make it less like a lot of Rare Disease Day events. They have researchers come in, and I wanted to make it about the families connecting. We had music, we had a magician, a photo booth, and it was like a buffet style. The kids were invited. We did have speakers. We had Rick Wadati of Positive Exposure, who is an amazing human being, and his program is amazing. So it was interesting as well. But it was more about, we are so in this together, and we really need each other to move forward for rare diseases. And it was great. So right after we had that event, I was contacted by U.S. Senator Whitehouse's office here in Rhode Island, and they wanted me to work on legislation for rare diseases called the Expert Act, and it was federal legislation. And we ended up working on it with them, and they sent out a press release, and they talked about working with Rhode Island Rare Disease Foundation, and it ended up Obama signed it into law. And what it did was allow outside experts to come into the FDA and work with them on, because, even parents are experts in rare diseases, and their voice needs to be heard, even during the clinical trial process, because, we're seeing things that they might not see. So we were really excited about that. And I started thinking to myself, this is a good idea, working by state. And we started working in other states. And at the time, we were the only ones that were working by state. And our chairman of the board came up with a piece of legislation called the Rare Disease Advisory Council. And we filed in Rhode Island, we filed in Mass, we filed in Pennsylvania, I think it was, New Jersey, and we filed in Florida, this piece of legislation. And we also, at that time, had started the art exhibit. It was in its first year, the art exhibit. And unfortunately, the rare disease space among umbrella organizations, there's not a lot of collaboration. There is a lot of competition because as you can imagine, in rare diseases, we're vying for the same dollars. And so I don't even know how to say this, but a large organization took my programs, and we were left with only the art exhibit. At the time, I was very upset because I think it's really important, because this other group that took my legislation and my business model is not run by a parent. It's run by a business person. And I think that for me, the fact that these programs were created by parents and patients is extremely important, because oftentimes when we go to the doctors, we're not listened to, especially in cases of invisible illnesses like Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. So, but again, I was very small at the time, and I was not willing to or able to, fight this larger, well-known organization. So the exhibit had just started. We had 17 portraits when we first started, and 4 years later, we had 120 portraits. The demand had increased by 500%. I was working every day on just the exhibit, and it is such an amazing, unique. As far as I know, we're the only ones in the world that have ever even attempted anything like this. And it became, and the reason it started, the art exhibit, one of my board members' daughters came to me, and she said, for an art class, I need to paint a portrait, and I'd like to paint someone with a rare disease. Well, having waited 18 years for a correct diagnosis for my daughter, I thought, wow, what if we could put that art exhibit in medical schools and get them in front of, in a way that, shows our humanity, in a way that would not just a name that's hard to pronounce, or seems so obscure, that there were humans, that were children, and we focus on children, and as a way of, grabbing. I have adult children with Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. They're adults, and I know it's even harder as an adult to get people to care about your cause. So right now we're focused on children, and we do hope, because a lot of the rare diseases only affect adults, well, not a lot, but many. So I thought it was going to be this tiny little exhibit that was going to travel around New England. And, a lot of our artists originally, most of them were from Rhode Island, which is where I'm based out of. So we had put out a call to art, and all these great artists answered it and did some. And our first event was Brown University Medical, which is in Rhode Island. And our next venue was Harvard Medical. And Harvard put out a press release. And I always say this, when Harvard talks, people listen. So we were picked up in Stat News did a story. The Boston Globe did a print story. The Today.com did a story. And I thought this was a joke. I thought it was one of my friends. CBS Sunday Morning, a producer called me. And I was like, what? And so it really just took off. It really just took off. And I think it touches people in a way that is inspiring. And it has been in some of the greatest institutions in the world. It's been to the FDA, the Broad Institute. And in fact, almost every time we go to a venue, we go back the next year. Like, we're penciled in for all these venues as long as this art exhibit is traveling.
I saw your impressive list of locations that you've been to, including the National Institutes of Health.
Oh, yes. We've been there. We actually unveiled a portrait, not this year, last year, at the NIH. So that was really exciting. So, yeah, we go to the NIH every year. We go to the FDA every year. We had a bunch of venues coming up, but because of COVID-19, we're actually looking at going to Brazil. So we're about to go international. As soon as this is over, the exhibit we're looking at international venues.
How many pieces of art do you have at this point?
Right now, we have about 120. We do have some that are assigned to their artists, but that are not in yet. And of course, I am not requiring, they need to stay home and not ship me anything, and stay safe. That's what's important. And we're in the process right now. This is usually after Rare Disease Day, and after the portraits have come back. And also, about 58 of our portraits are still out. Like the FDA still has the exhibit, because it all happened around when COVID really, the Broad Institute still has it. There's 2 other venues that we have about 58 portraits out. So, we're kind of, I don't want them to, we don't have any delivery. I don't want anybody taking any chances. We're not going anywhere. We don't have any live events, so they can hang on to them. I know they're safe. And I think that they're, from what I hear from people, that where the exhibit is being displayed, they love seeing the kids every day. I've had people from the FDA call me and say, we miss the kids, being on the wall. So I'm sure everybody is still enjoying them. And I'm glad they're still doing what they were meant to do. And that's, inspire researchers. And it's really actually gone so much beyond that, because it's captured the attention of the general public, which we really need in order to get all kinds of legislation passed. And if they don't know we exist and they hear, I'll give you an example, drug pricing. Do you know anything about orphan drug pricing?
A little bit. I know about the approval process.
Act. Do you know about the Orphan Drug Act?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so the Orphan Drug Act, gives them a lot of incentives because it's such a difficult space to be in because of the small populations. And so they get incentives, and people get outraged when they hear the cost of an orphan drug. But the cost of not having a treatment, my kids don't have a treatment, and there's nothing in the works at all. The cost of not having a treatment is extremely expensive. So, and sometimes, often over the course of the lifetime of the person, much more would be spent on, care and other treatments to just maintain some form of a life. I mean, my daughter just had brain surgery in December, and luckily we have insurance, but it's not cheap. I mean, we had to go stay in Long Island and live there in a hotel. That was really expensive for us.
Yeah, I can't imagine how expensive it is. I know that the Ronald McDonald House and some other charities build the houses near the hospitals. Is that an option for you at all?
My younger daughter, when she had her Chiari brain surgery, and she has cranial cervical instability, so she had a fusion as well. Luckily, she was of the age. She was just, I think they go to 21. She was 18. She turned 18 2 days after brain surgery. So we got to stay there, and it was an incredible experience. We have made lifelong friends. Most of, the people that are eligible that stay there, a lot of them that go to the same neurosurgeon. So we all became friends and are in contact to this day. Just really, really deep friendships. And one of my best friend, her daughter and my daughter were having a procedure at the same exact time. And we have photos of them, and they're both redheads, and they're both the same age. And, her mom's down one end, I'm down the other end, at her bed. And someone took a picture of us, I don't know how I would have. I mean, I did it with Olivia. I did it alone. And I did it in a hotel room, which was really, really hard, but it was my second time. I don't know how I would have done it without the Ronald McDonald House. It was absolutely, they actually asked me to speak. They had a fundraiser while we were there, and they asked me to speak. And I said, I run my own nonprofit, and I have to say, I think what we do is wonderful, but this is the one nonprofit I will say is better than mine. Like, the service is just invaluable. I wish they had something I really wish they had something for adults, low cost, because it's very expensive to stay in a hotel and eat out at restaurants. And, you don't get the support of being around other people who are going through something similar. And a lot of them, it's just one parent that are at these, so the support is incredible.
I'm so happy you had a good experience there. I have a friend who has a daughter with cystic fibrosis, and she's still under the age of 18, and my friend stays at the Ronald McDonald House while her daughter's at the hospital.
Right.
And she always has a good experience, and
it's amazing.
Is
They're wonderful.
Right there next to the hospital if anything should go wrong. And that's one of the benefits too. I didn't mean to get off topic here.
No, that's okay.
It's a great story though. And thanks for sharing.
Yeah, it was a good experience.
Now, have your daughters been featured in any of the portraits that are in your exhibition?
I refuse. I will not. Although I did break down. I don't want it to be about my kids. I don't want it to be about me. I do have to speak. I am asked to speak a lot of the venues where we unveil portraits or at events. I wish I didn't have to do that, but somebody has to be the face, and it's going to be me. I've gotten used to public speaking. It was very difficult in the beginning, but of course, and I'm very, very passionate about this project, and I know it inside out, so I'm very comfortable and actually enjoy speaking about it. But I did not want it to be about my kids. But I did, the board wanted me to write a letter in our newest catalog and include a picture, and I included one of me with my daughters. But yeah, I didn't want it to,
I get it.
It's just, it's not that, because I feel like even though it was my idea, I feel like most of the credit belongs to the artists. I feel like I'm a worker bee. I have some good ideas on how to, a lot of the venues come to us. Almost all of if you go to our website and you see the media, I don't do press releases. They come to me, and I'm always stunned. When we were in the Lancet. The Lancet did a story about us, and they had emailed me, and I thought I was so honored to be featured in the Lancet. This amazing project.
I understand that on your website that you have all the images of the artwork, but then you also have some bios of the artists. Is that right?
Yes, we do. We have a page specific to the artists, and we link to their websites so that they, we want to promote them as well. I mean, we have some amazing artists. They're just, they keep giving. They do one and they'll email me and say, hey, can I do another one? And I'm like, absolutely. It's amazing. And from all over the world. I mean, the guy from Thailand, the artist from Thailand has done 2, which is incredible.
I've noticed you've had a few from Poland, I think from India, some from the UK, and then plenty from the US as well. Yes. That's fantastic.
Yep. Bali. It's incredible.
And what's the website so people listening to this podcast can visit it, experience the artwork, and take a look at the bios of those artists?
Okay, it's www.beyondthediagnosis.org. I also would direct them to my favorite page on the website, which is called Face to Face. And that's when the parents or the kids, or the parents and the kids, are able to see their portrait in person. And that's pretty cool. Seeing the kids next to their portraits is insane. I mean, I've been able to meet some of these families. Like we did the Lysosomal Storage Disease Conference in San Diego one year. And there was a family that drove from Utah and a family that drove from Arizona and another family that happened to be in the area, that their kids' portraits were at this event, and they drove to come and see them with their kids. And I got to meet the kids, and I was really, actually one of the kids had passed away, but it meant so much. As soon as the mother and I saw each other, I'm going to stop crying. It meant so much to her to be able to see her son's portrait in person.
That's beautiful. And are these portraits created from a photograph that the artist has in front of them?
Yes, we generally ask people who are submitting an application for a portrait that they submit like 3 to 5 photographs. We also ask for a bio, and a lot of parents have Facebook pages for their rare kids, or they have blogs. We ask for links to that because these artists want to know everything they can about these children. So, even though the photo is great, and we have some that are just from the photo, a lot of times, and then I will connect the families to my personal Facebook page, and I will connect with the artists, and then I'll connect them together through that. So we actually had one artist that lived right down the street yes, which was really, really cool. So he got to meet them. We have a film coming out about that. So we actually had the whole thing filmed. We unveiled the portrait, and but we're excited about that.
What's the film and where can we see it when it comes out? I'd love to know more.
It's a film. It's the artist is actually also which doesn't surprise me, a filmmaker because they're also creative. He is also works at Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania with this young girl we were painting. Is a patient. So we started talking, and he said, I'd love to make a short film about this. So it will include his process of painting. It will also include the family and kind of, I don't know if you watched the CBS piece. It will kind of be like that. And then they had a conference for this little girl who has long QT syndrome, and they had the SADS conference, and they unveiled it at that. So that will be as part of the film too, them seeing it for the first time and, the unveiling. And we're really excited. That should be out shortly. So I'll send you a link once we get that finished up. Everything's going slower since COVID. Things have been put on hold, but we're lucky. We're such a visual program that we are still able to make people smile and to really light up this dark time. Where people can see these beautiful kids, and it's good news. We need more good news.
Absolutely. Will you be putting that film on your website also, or a link to it?
Yes, absolutely. It'll be on the website.
Very cool. And I understand that you're going to be doing a Facebook Live event soon, or a series of them connecting the families and the artists on
Yes.
Facebook Live. I'd love to hear more about that.
So we decided that a good way to uplift our community, because during COVID-19, a lot of people are hunkered down, they're social distancing, they're in their homes, but they're also not worried about their kids who are incredibly vulnerable. In the first place, we don't have a treatment for our disease. So it makes us even more vulnerable because we have an underlying condition that can't be treated. It's not like having diabetes where you have a treatment. There are no treatments for most of these diseases. So, when COVID first struck, I was just, filled with anxiety. I went through a really hard time adjusting and trying to think of, not worry every minute of every day about keeping my children safe. So, I just went to my go-to place that makes me happy, and that's the art exhibit. And then I started thinking, how can we, share that joy and that promise and that just that happiness. And so I said, let's do Facebook Live feeds. We had done one before. It was myself and a Rhode Island artist that ended up being a great success, 3,000 views. We were really excited. So what we're going to do is the artist will be on. I will be on, although I'll probably keep taking myself off, you can shut your, because I don't want, trying to get the lighting right. I'm like, nothing's working. So let's just keep me off. So, the family and the artist. So we'll talk to the family about and the portrait will be up as well. So we'll talk to the family about, the disease, get some more insight into that disease and what it's like to live with that disease. And then we'll go to the artist and they will talk about, what's it like to paint for us? What were they feeling? What are their, how do they process this? And they're so different. All of the artists are so different. Like I said, they're from all over the world. So we're really excited about this. Some of them have met in person. Like one of our artists has met one that is already in the queue to be doing a Facebook Live feed. They met at an unveiling that we did at the Rochester Art Center. So they were there. So they've already known each other. And of course, everybody remains friends. To me, I like to describe this as a family. We all become connected. And I'd like to tell you a really cool story about one of the artists. One of the artists emailed me and said she had painted a little boy named Victor. And she said, could I have their mailing address? I would like to send Victor a toy truck for Christmas. And so I'm sure it's okay, but I contacted the family, and I told them that. They said, of course. And then the mother called me after Christmas and said, the truck she sent him was one he can drive.
No way.
Yes.
Oh.
It wasn't like what they were expecting. They were expecting a little truck, and they got one of those trucks you can drive.
How old's Victor?
Victor at the time I think he was 5. So, I mean, not a truck like a car truck. It was one of those.
Power Wheels.
Yeah, like something like that.
Yeah.
So they were really excited, and these artists I found come to follow these children that they painted and their progress with their disease. And I have one artist who everybody he's painted is part of his prayers at night, and he's painted a lot for us. So he must be up late at night.
That's not a bad thing.
No. So they become there. It's such a meaningful. I always say it's a project that's from the heart for the heart, and it gives me an enormous amount of pleasure to just go to my gallery and sit there with all of these kids around me. Although I used to, I don't know if you noticed, I don't know if it's even on our website, but I did a video one day when all the portraits were in and they had come back from all their venues, and I was walking around naming everybody. And it's like, there's and I don't know, there's maybe 100 of them at the time. And, people were like, oh my God, I can't believe you know everybody's name. And I said, yes, but now that we're at 120 and I'm getting older, it might be more difficult.
Well, I've seen a lot of really great testimonials on your website. I know you're giving your own testimonial, but reading through some of those, I've seen some from the medical community,
Yes.
those that were viewing the exhibit there in their institutions, but then also some of the parents who have participated. They're very moving. And you were telling me how much joy you get out of it. And I just love how some of the comments are just so inclusive, where parents are trying to say doctors need to handle each patient differently.
Right.
And it's going to lead to more inclusion. I love that. And then also, I can't remember if a doctor said this or a parent, but what was said is Beyond the Diagnosis introduces the general public to the rare disease community as if they've never met before. So again, it creates the spirit of inclusion. And
Right.
I have a child with a developmental disability, and there's this big movement towards inclusion in the
Yes.
schools, inclusion in whatever is available in the community. And I just feel like as a parent of a child with a disability, I have to draw a short parallel to what you deal with, having a child with two children with a rare disease. You want your children included, and even if you have to do it in a unique way, it gets the
Yes.
job done, and it's all positive. And I love
Yes.
that.
Yes, that's absolutely, when you hear rare diseases, you think of, and I've been for years trying to write a book called Diseases Without Doctors. And when I first started doing my research, of course I read about freak shows. And I was reading about one of the guys in the freak show, and I was like, this sounds familiar. And it was Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, because the guy could pull his skin way out, which is an EDS thing. And so, I started thinking, I was going back. Of course, you can find things in the Bible that I was trying to find things that I could tell which disease this is by reading about it. But rare diseases, I think maintains that stigma that we're the ones that are in the freak shows. And that's just not true. that's why we wanted to show us. I mean, my daughter can do all kinds of tricks. Before I knew she had EDS, when she was young, she would dislocate her shoulder and lick her elbow. And we were like, oh my God, that's amazing. She should be on the David Letterman, Stupid Human Tricks segment. And, it was freaky. People would say, oh my God, it's freaky. But I think that the exhibit, just hearing the names is intimidating of these diseases. So I think that when they see our kids, they can see in these portraits, they can see them as they would see their own children, just as children who can be bratty sometimes, who are lovable, who are, somebody's child, somebody's niece or nephew, brother or sister, and they get to see them as human. Yes. We are human. Our kids are, and I actually think they're extraordinary. I mean, they go through so much and they're just, I can't, my kids, what they've been through, both the brain surgeries, and Olivia's had 23 surgeries in her lifetime. She's 23 years old. And I would be moaning and groaning, and I can't believe that they just get up. And my daughter had brain surgery, missed 2 years of high school. She was bedridden at one point. She was so sick. Went back to school and ended up getting a perfect score on her SAT. So it was like, what? I actually called her neurosurgeon and said, what did you do to her? We were calling him Dr. Frankenstein. What did you do to my daughter? I mean, she's very bright. Anyway, she was doing, on her trial things, she was getting in the 1500s, but to get a perfect score, extraordinary, especially in her. She still struggles with comorbids of Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. So I am awed by, like this morning, she came into me, she woke me up and she said, my shoulder's dislocated. Very calmly, can you fix this? And, and I have to help her, and you can feel it actually pop back in, which makes me cringe. But she can't do it on her own. She needs someone to be, putting pressure on that area so she can pop it back in. But
good job, Dr. Mom.
Thank you. I would really be, if it were me, I'm sure I would be whining and complaining, and they just keep surprising me with they're like warriors, they're amazing warriors, and they just continued every day to make me proud and surprise me.
One of the reasons that you and I met was actually because you posted on LinkedIn about that parenting win where you have a child, one of your daughters, who got the perfect score on the SAT. Yes. And I think that's how we met. And having a child with a disability myself, I thought, wow, that's awesome. Number one for the kiddo. But then number two, as a parent, we're always looking for those wins to just make us feel like our child is normal or better than normal. What is normal? Right. But 1600, that is a standardized test, and people can recognize that she is highly intelligent to be able to achieve that. So again, congratulations to your daughter.
I had a T-shirt made for my birthday. My daughter got a perfect score on the SAT. And then the back is like the picture. But when I posted that, I was so proud of her. And I just took a screenshot of her phone and I posted that, and ended up eventually getting 5 million views. It went viral. Hundreds of thousands of reactions.
On Instagram, or where was that?
LinkedIn.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, LinkedIn, of all places to go viral. And there were thousands of comments. And at one point I said, Hannah, I'm spending the entire day answering comments for you. People were asking who was her tutor. Could they use her tutor? I'm like, she didn't have a tutor. I personally, was on her case all the time because I didn't think she was studying enough for her SAT, but apparently she was.
I think she did okay.
Yes. So yeah, it was shocking, and the fact that the school had actually graduated her without our knowledge. She had 4 more credits to take, and she had to fight them. She had to file an appeal, and they were trying to get her to graduate with 4 less credits than her peers. And she won, and she was her own attorney. It was just her and I at the hearing, and it was, of course, they had an attorney, and everybody else was there, the principal and superintendent of school, assistant superintendent of schools, the guidance counselors, and they were all against her. And she was amazing, and they thought it was going to take an hour. It took 4 hours, took 4.5 hours, and their attorney said, "Your daughter should be an attorney."
Now, is she going to college right now?
Yes, she actually has just made her choice. She's going to go to Boston College in the fall. So we're really excited.
And she'll be close to home. She
actually only applied to because she's still, this like I said, there's no treatments, there's no cures. We manage the disease and a lot of the care. She still doesn't drive because of her POTS. Symptoms make her, she has a lot of brain fog, which is weird because she's so smart, but she has a lot of brain fog, and she kind of spaces out. So she's afraid to drive because she'll, be in school and all of a sudden like, oh my God, how did I end up here? So she's afraid to get in an accident. And if, because she's fused, it would be devastating for her to get into a car accident. And so I do, and my other daughter is blind in one eye and also has, issues with her neck and had the Chiari surgery. So I'm the Uber a lot.
Did both of your daughters go into anything medical then, or do they have their sights on that?
Hannah is. Olivia's going into psychology, and Hannah is going into biology, and with a minor in chemistry. So that's they both of them. They both love math. And one time I was sitting outside and relaxing. I love reading. So that was, although I have learned a lot about medicine, and I've actually done some research that was presented at a medical conference into tethered spinal cord syndrome. So, and I've actually found a treatment for my kids that is now prescribed by mast cell activation experts, that they were formerly not prescribing it until I discovered it. So that's, I call myself a citizen scientist. They're my kids. I am going to save them. I've learned a lot about their comorbids and Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. And I spend a lot of time trying to help them. So yeah, citizen scientist. I don't know if you had a chance to look at my LinkedIn profile, but I do call myself a citizen scientist.
I did see that on there. I saw you're an advocate for a couple of drug companies or biotech companies.
Genetics.
Genetics, thank you. And then I saw that you're a citizen scientist and then the CEO and founder of Beyond the Diagnosis.
Yes.
And in a past life, you were also in finance. Is that right?
Yes. And I did get a D in biology in high school.
Oh, dear.
And managed to avoid it entirely in college. So the fact that I've been able to teach myself, I can read a medical journal article and understand it. If it's related to their disease. Like Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome is a multi-systemic disorder. It's also not a rare. Their type, hypermobile type, is a rarely diagnosed disease. It hasn't been classified. There was one study that came out that said it was not rare. Should I define rare disease?
Sure, absolutely.
For people who don't know, a lot of people don't know what is the definition of a rare disease. So in the United States, a rare disease is a disease that affects fewer than 200,000 people. So there are some rare diseases that are right at that line, and some rare diseases that you recognize. Like you recognize, a lot of people recognize cystic fibrosis.
And hemophilia, ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease.
Right, exactly. Yep. So, but there are other ones like incontinentia pigmenti that nobody recognizes. So, so that's the definition of a rare disease. In the United States, there are 30 million people living with a rare disease. Half of those people are children. So that's 15 million children. 5 million children, because of their disease, will not live to see their 5th birthday. To me, that and that's from a lack of treatment. To me, letting that many kids die without a treatment is a health crisis. And I think that rare diseases should be treated as a health crisis. We need a lot more funding. A lot of the research that goes into rare diseases, I mean, the parents, there's some extraordinary parents out there that are raising millions and millions of dollars, and they're the ones driving the research for their kids. It's extraordinary. I mean, these families are I have met some of the most extraordinary people in my life coming into this. And a lot of people will ask me, why aren't you doing this for Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome? I said, well, when I first started working in the rare disease space, I didn't know my kids had Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. I thought Hannah had nothing and that Olivia had hypermelanosis of Ito. It wasn't until Olivia was 18 years old that she started, and it was under my nose the whole time. They actually didn't become symptomatic. Well, Olivia had some things, but until puberty. So, hormones will activate mast cell degranulation. It's a long story, degranulation, and I don't want to go into that. Don't get me going on that, rabbit hole, because I will explain, everything about what I know about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. But it's very complex and it's multisystemic. So I was able to learn a lot more. And what I learned about medicine, it was always, to me, it was so daunting and seemed so difficult. But what I learned is it's just like learning a new language. A lot of it is about knowing the right terminology. It's no longer, of course, when you start getting into molecular biology and, things get hairy, but for the most part, it's not beyond the reach of the parent to be able to understand, even on a molecular level, what their disease is.
I'm going to shift gears just a little bit, and I want to know about the logo for Beyond the Diagnosis. You have talked a little bit about there being so many rare diseases. I have read on your website that there are at least 7,000 rare diseases.
Yes.
And what is the logo for Beyond the Diagnosis, and how'd you come up with that? Okay,
well, it's a zebra, and it absolutely is directly related to rare diseases. In medical schools, they used to teach medical students, when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. So they're actually teaching them this is not a rare disease. What you're looking at, don't think anything crazy. This is not a rare disease. Think something more common. So we became known as zebras. So that's why we use the zebra logo.
I've heard that no two zebras have the same stripes. Have you ever heard that?
Yes, I absolutely have heard that. Yep.
Did that play into picking that as the logo too?
It was, for me, it was about everything, because 18 years not knowing what's going on with your kid is just way too long. So for me, I was super focused on diagnosis time and the medical students. So that's why I was, we need to get to these medical students before, they become doctors. So they have more of an open mind when they're looking at something that they've never seen or, that's unusual, that they just, a lot of time, I can't tell you how many times I've heard over the years, it's in your head, or it's in their head, or it's in, and a lot of, especially with invisible illnesses like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
Well, thanks for sharing about that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we love that logo. I think it's fantastic.
Oh, it's perfectly.
So recognizable. I know, it's beautiful. When they first sent it to me, the company that made it, I was like, oh my God, we love it. Perfect. Exactly what we were looking for.
Yes. Now, on a different topic, you have a lot of hats that you wear doing all this advocacy work. Yes. When did you realize that you had a passion for this?
Immediately.
As soon as you found out your daughters had some sort of a rare disease?
My very first event, the very first Rare Disease Day event, I thought, oh my God, this is important to people in this community. And at the time, like I said, I thought my daughter had this incredibly rare disease, hypermelanosis of Ito. I felt like I wasn't alone. And it was so important to me to be around these families, even if it was just going to be once a year, was incredibly important to me. And because we are completely isolated and misunderstood. And, working on legislation and testifying and doing those things, and seeing that it was making a difference, it just is, I don't know. I love helping people. I think I always have. But to be helping people that are like me and like my kids is, I think it's an honor to do this work. I really do. I mean, I don't work for anybody but the rare disease community.
That's beautiful.
They're my boss. They are my boss. I do what is best for them always.
Yeah, I can tell the mama bear is coming out, like you really want to do something right, do something to help. And so when you have these exhibits and your work for Beyond the Diagnosis is being shown to everybody, how does that make you feel?
I generally think about how lucky we are that the art community, and I always say, I don't know if you know, but we're also known as orphan diseases. Rare diseases are sometimes called orphan diseases. And so I always say, and of course, the treatments are called orphan drugs. So I always say, we are like orphans, but we've been adopted by the art community.
Oh,
and
cool.
It's a really good feeling to know that there's an entire community of people that care about us and that care about this cause. I can't tell you how hard it is to get funding for an umbrella organization for rare diseases. You can't walk up to a business, even, somebody like a CVS, or they don't understand. They don't understand what they're contributing to because they don't understand rare diseases. So most of our funding comes from the pharmaceutical industry that is actually working in this space, and they understand. But aside from that, I can't get funding from regular, I can't get funding from an insurance company or, if I wrote a grant to them, they see the words rare diseases, they think uncommon. And I think, look, we're 10% of the population. We're buying gas. We're buying products that you make. We should be supported by everybody that is selling something or a service, or because we're using it and we're contributing to you, but they don't give back to us. And I've tried a lot of different ways to do this. It's been hard. It's been really hard.
Maybe invite some folks to those art exhibitions that you have. Maybe it's I've
been trying to send out a catalog along with, a request for funding. And then they're like, oh my God, this is crazy. We did get it. We actually did get one insurance company, and we've gotten a few small businesses, and that you could actually, like you said, invite them in to see this incredible event. But rare diseases, just those words, rare diseases, they're killing us. If they called it something else, it's not like you say cancer and it's easily recognizable. I mean, if you said, oh, I know a child with cancer, I automatically have a vision in my head of what that looks like. And we know how hard cancer is. But we don't know, the general public does not know how hard rare diseases are, and in some cases, because there's not a treatment. So there's not even the possibility of a treatment, so that there's not a lot of hope.
It sounds like not only is there an obstacle for awareness with the diseases themselves, but it sounds like one of your biggest challenges is funding. I don't want to assume that, but what would you say your biggest challenge is?
Funding. You're absolutely right. It's funding. It's funding. It's difficult. Even in the beginning, getting funding from the pharmaceutical industry, they're not into art. But luckily, some of them started seeing the exhibit at things, like the NIH, and recognizing that it was amazing. And so we're getting, we don't get the kind of funding other groups get, but we still are getting a lot of the companies that work in this space that are dedicated to their patient population are starting to fund this program, which is really exciting for us because we're all in this. We all work closely with researchers and the pharmaceutical industry, and so it's important that we all, advance this program as much as we can. It's why it's crazy. It's successful. I mean, and it's not my fault. Or not my doing. I think it's magical, and I think that it has just captures anybody who sees it. It captures their heart. People tell me I don't take enough credit for myself, but I truly believe that it's just this magical project that is so from the heart that it has its own energy and positivity to it.
If I had to ask you what's the best thing about Beyond the Diagnosis and what you're doing, what would you say that is?
The best thing personally for me is meeting the artists and families. That's the best thing for me. The best thing for the community has been the way we are able to show our children as human beings first and not their disease. These kids are not their disease. They're just not. I think that is so apparent in the exhibit. And the fact that we have so many different artists participating gives it this, there's so many different styles and unusual, everything's different. So you're drawn to every portrait because everyone is different. I just think it's been just a boon for us. We did do Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. We did 2 kids with EDS, and I unveiled that at the FDA. And that was one of the greatest days of my life to be able to do my children's disease at the FDA.
Congratulations on that personal win. That's great.
Yeah, it was great. I was crying. I was like, oh my God, this is so hard. But yeah, it was a great day in many, many, many great days we've had in the past 5. We're going on 5 years, I think. Many, many great experiences.
Well, if you had to do this all over again, is there anything you would do differently?
As far as the exhibit?
Just starting the whole Beyond the Diagnosis.
I would have protected my my ideas, my intellectual property. I would have done, not because I need to take the credit for anything, but because a parent needs to be given the credit. We need to be seen for who we are. Most of what happens, as a matter of fact, this whole thing started because of a mother of a child with a rare disease, Abby Meyer. She started the National Organization for Rare Disorders, which is now not run by a parent, but it was started by parents. That's huge. You need to know the power of these parents and of these patients. That needs to be known. I don't need to be given credit personally, but the fact that I did start this business model, and a patient in my organization started the Rare Disease Advisory Council, needs to be recognized because we need to be seen for the competent, driven people that we are. And that most of the good ideas do come from the parents and the patients.
Can you tell me, is there anything else that you would like to share before we wrap this up? You've shared so much good information, and I feel like I've learned so much, but if there's anything that I've left out that you want to tell me about or tell the listeners about, I would love to give you the chance to say it right now.
For me, I think people need to know how powerful the arts are. I didn't know before I started this. I didn't know anything about art. Other than the obvious things. But I think that people need to know that you can change the world through art in ways that you never probably I never would have imagined before that, researchers would be interested in this because of the art exhibit, or, that people are being inspired to work on these diseases because of the art exhibit, or the treatments motivate people to keep going, because of the art exhibit. I never dreamed that would happen. This art exhibit has exceeded all of my expectations, all of them. And I just could not be happier. And I think people need to recognize how important the arts are.
I didn't even realize how powerful it was until I started looking at your website and seeing where the exhibits have been and the testimonials from the medical community and the parents. And I'm a believer. I recognize the power of art.
That's awesome. Great. We got one more person. Thank you.
Well, it's been such a pleasure talking with you today. And again, thank you for being on the Pharmacist Voice podcast. If anyone wants to look at your website, could you share that with us one more time?
Yep, it's www.beyondthediagnosis.org.
Thanks, Patty.
Thank you so much, Kim. It was an absolute pleasure anytime.
What a great interview. I learned so much talking to Patty. Thank you for joining me for episode 19 of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. Visit thepharmacistvoice.com to subscribe and read the show notes. That's thepharmacist with an S, voice.com.